Turn my light on. There we go. We got some. Now we got some brightness. I feel brighter already. We are live. It is 10:38 in the morning. It's Cyber Monday, so hopefully everybody's out there typing away, finding good deals, getting stuff hopefully for Christmas. Go check out richardholderperformance.com. I put a description of the name of the store up in the description. We've got deals going on still Black Friday through Cyber Monday, and we may be continuing this stuff through the holidays to try to help everybody out save some money for, because really, let's be honest. I I don't want socks for Christmas. I don't want a tie. I don't want any of that stuff. Slippers would be nice. It gets cold. But what guys really want, we want cams, we want injectors, we want performance stuff. To find you go to Open Presents to find a camshaft under the tree, that's like a little slice of heaven, a little slice of awesomeness. Or injectors or LS7 lifters or whatever it is you need for your combination. Cams and springs, all that. You can find multiple boxes. There's so much stuff there that you could get. And we're adding more stuff every day. We got some more stuff going up today and this week. So we got some good stuff going on. But today we want to talk about cylinder heads. And I'm actually looking into adding cylinder heads to the store. I want to talk to the guys at K-Tech possibly and see about adding some of their ported heads. They've got a ported head program. I think it works pretty well. And it's affordable, which I like, because that's kind of what this channel has been about and what the store is about also. So let me know if you guys let me know in the comments if you guys want to see some ported heads on there, because we want to, we're going to talk about ported heads right now, and there's there's a pro side and a con side to that. The con side is always cost. The pro side is always power, and the con side is always cost. So you always have to balance those out. But what I want to talk about today is a test that I did quite a while back, and I did on a 5.3, or this one was on a 4.8. One of my, and for a long time, the go-to heads for that kind of thing were one of two heads. Either a ported version of the stock head. Brian Tooley, who used to own Total Engine Airflow, had done up some 706 heads, a few sets of those, I think, and those always work great. Now, when they did them, whenever we tested, dang it, whenever they tested them, we always did like the full whammy one. So it had bigger valves and CNC chambers, and it was, fully done, stage 2, 3, 5, whatever it was. So those always work very well. On the aftermarket side, a set of TrickFlow 205 heads, those work really well. And those are the ones that we tested. Those are designed for the smaller bore motor because, while you can run, the factory runs 243s or 799s on the 4.8, there is overhang because the chamber itself is bigger than the opening is on the bore of the block. So, guys, they want to nitpick about this stuff. Obviously, the factory did it and it works, and we've run it like that a lot of times. But there is overhang, so people would want to get in and argue about the fact, oh well, the combustion chamber is overhanging the edge of the bore, and that's not good. You get shearing, and it reduces flow, and does all these things, and yet it still makes power. But the TrickFlow 205 heads have a chamber, not just in volume, but size, that's designed for that small bore motor. And they've always worked really well. They flow really good. They'll support more power than 99% of the people that are putting together 4.8s or 5.3s are ever going to make. So it's more than enough cylinder head. Same thing with the ported version that Brian did, or that the guys from Total Engine Airflow do. And other guys now have, there are lots of CNC programs out there for guys that are doing factory heads, because it's a good thing to start with and a good thing to end with. So there are lots of choices there. But the question is, how well does that work? And should you be doing that? And that's what I want to talk about. We specifically want to focus on a turbo combination that I did, where we did a test on it. But I think the same discussion can be had about whether or not you do those on a stock motor, on a naturally aspirated motor, because are you going to get the kind of bang for the buck that you really want to? If you have all the money, just do it, because it's definitely going to add power. But is it a good step up given its price? We know that a camshaft is quite a bit less money. Obviously, I got cams and springs up there for sale for they're 10% off. I think they're $199 or something like that. So And then the whole package is probably like 260 or 270. So that's a pretty good deal. Ported heads are going to be a lot more money than that. And do you get more power from a ported head than a camshaft? Probably not. You have to have, and this is one of the videos I'm working on today. It's about ported heads and how much power you get from ported heads. And the amount of power that you get from ported heads depends entirely on the motor that you're putting it on. So if you have a stock 4.8 and you put ported heads on it, don't expect very much. I mean, when we put a set of ported heads on an LS3, we got 10 horsepower. We know the heads will support way more than that because they have. We've tested them on other combinations and they made way more power than that. But we weren't, the motor that we tested it on a stock one, was not in a position to take advantage of that. And that's part of the issue, is that, do the heads work? Do they add power? Yeah, but are they going to add power to your combination? Maybe, maybe not. If you have a really mild combination and you have heads that already can support the power level that you're at, you're not going to get big changes from that. And that's something to think about when you're thinking about ported heads. The nice thing is, if you compare a cathedral port application to a rec port application, the cathedral port application, a couple things to think about. One, they're usually smaller, 4.8, 5.3, 6.0. The rec port stuff, 6.0, 6.2. And so they'll want more cylinder head just because they're bigger, especially put a camshaft in them. The other thing, the other side of that equation, though, is the factory rec port heads flow a lot more already. I mean, a stock LS3 head is already a 300 plus CFM head. They already can support lots and lots of power. Cathedral port heads are 230 to 250, so they flow a lot less, but they're going on a motor that needs a lot less. So does that balance out? You have to ask yourself all of those things. And if you're doing a dedicated buildup where you're trying to make, 500 horsepower, like we were talking about with a 4.8, you're going to need ported heads. They're definitely going to help. Or 500 plus on a 5.3 or 600 on the 6.0, you're going to need ported heads to make that happen. That's definitely going to be a necessity. Do I recommend a guy putting ported heads on a 4.8 that has like my low buck truck camshaft on? Probably not. I mean, you'll always get something, but you don't have enough displacement in the motor or enough compression or big enough camshaft to take advantage of what's there. But the question is, what happens on a turbo motor? And that's kind of what we want to talk about a little bit more detail today. As I ran a test on a turbo 4.8, and we ran this head test. We ran the stock 706 heads, and then we ran TrickFlow 205 heads, and we ran it on a turbo 4.8 that was sporting a stock camshaft. So we started out with essentially turbocharging a stock 4.8. So it had the stock truck manifold. It had springs on it. Stock 706 heads, stock LM7 camshaft, LR4 camshaft, and then a single turbo application. And we ran this thing. It made 523 horsepower. Then we took off the 706 heads, put on the TrickFlow 205 heads, and ran it again at the same boost. We didn't run a boost controller on this thing. We just ran the wastegate. And it turns out that with the bigger head on there, the boost pressure was actually down slightly, but not very much, 4 or 5/10 of half a pound or less. And was only that at the very top where the horsepower peak would be. But putting the heads on the turbo combination increased the power output to 574. So we picked up like 50 horsepower doing that head swap on the turbo application on a motor that shouldn't want a whole bunch more head flow because it was a 4.8 with a stock cam. I've yet to try to duplicate this test, which I want to do, because I don't really see how that could happen. Now, I know a TrickFlow 205 head is going to add more power, but is it going to add because if we use our multiplier deal, we're like, okay, we're running 7.5 pounds. So we're going to get another 50% increase from the boost that's going to multiply whatever was there. So if we back calculate 50, we go, okay, look, we got to get like 30 or 35 horsepower gain from the head naturally aspirated. And then that gets multiplied out to about 50 if we do our 1.5 kind of thing. Are we going to get 30 or 35 horsepower from the trick flow head on a naturally aspirated, otherwise stock 4.8. I mean, in fact, that will be our poll, because that would give us the next level of interpolation on our wholly subjective thing, on our guess. Okay, with the TrickFlow 205 heads, add 30 to 35 horsepower over the stock 706 heads on a stock NA 4.8 liter. Do you think that they would add that much power on a stock one? And then that way, with the turbo, we could get the multiplier effect that we got where we saw 50 horsepower change in power. The one thing I haven't gone back to look at is I don't remember now if the TrickFlow 205 heads were a smaller chamber. I don't think that they would be significantly smaller than a 706 head, but we may have seen some of the power gain from compression as well. So I need to go back and look and see exactly what the, I hope that I can find that. I don't remember exactly what the part number was, or if I even had that data, but I'll have to go back and look. Maybe I can reach out to the guys at Summit and see if they can look way back years when TrickFlow had sent me those heads to test. I don't know how long ago that was. It was years and years ago. But at any rate, we saw a 50 horsepower change in power, which is good. The question is now, the other question, we have lots of questions today, is would you do that? Would that be necessary? We know from previous discussions that if we put a turbo on this thing and we just turn it up, that the turbo that was on here wasn't very big. Let's see what our description is. Single turbo, air water intercooler, GT45 turbo, dual turbo smart wastegates. Yeah, so it's a GT45 turbo. So we weren't anywhere near the 575 horsepower. We weren't anywhere near the flow limit of the turbo. But on that turbo, let's say that turbo is good for, on this 4.8, let's say it's good for 750 or 800 horsepower range, kind of. Would you worry about adding the ported heads, full well knowing that if you did a cammed 4.8 and a DNA turbo, you could max the turbo out? In fact, you probably could max the turbo out without doing a cam upgrade. It's just going to take a lot of boost, because we made 525 at like 7.5 pounds. If you want to really wick up the boost, you probably could max that turbo out with a stock cam. Certainly with any, like my low buck truck camshaft, a Truck Norris, Chupacabra, anything, even a mild one. You can put a bigger one in. We tested a BTR stage 1 camshaft on this that I'm doing the video on. And so you can max the turbo out. So does it behoove you to just turn the boost up and not worry about doing a head upgrade? Or do you like the idea of getting more NA power and then only having to run much less boost pressure to get the same kind of eventual power under boost? Yeah, good question. So let me know. Let me know how you guys feel about that. Let me know your thoughts. Yeah, ProMax has some good deals going on. All the ProMax stuff that I've tested has worked really well. All I want for Christmas is the right cam. Exactly. Good afternoon. Chop, chop, chop. Everyone, it's getting cold outside. I slapped a set of 245 heads on my 402 with a 40 millimeter and called it a day. 245 trick flow heads or 245 LS or AFR heads? Which ones did you put on there? I can get the parts. What I really want is someone I could trust to delete my L94. You need to get rid of the DOD on it or something? Recently listened to you and Matt Happlepod. That was a long time ago. I listened twice, but haven't made it all the way through. Kimi, it is really long, right? What is it, 3 or 4 hours or something? It's even chilly in Florida. It was in the 40s. Uh-oh. I didn't think it got that cold there. It's not good snake weather there. Try living in London. Yeah, I don't think that would be the way to go. Neil, does it snow in London? My E85 turbo LQ4 needs more compression, ported 706s. Why does your E85 6-liter need more compression? What turbo is on it? Yeah, for 243. Wales in the house. Have a Ford 6-liter, 75, 76. We're all 80. Been chasing a hunting idle. Surge problem I can't track down. Everyone says intake leak. I smoke tested it. Can't find any leaks. Ordered LSXR intake. Motion throttle body. I would doubt that a factory intake would leak unless it's got a bad gasket or something on it. Fixes it with new gaskets. Got Neil and Neil getting together in England. Think about porting the iron heads on my 8.1, using an S475 or an S480 turbo. Good idea. The turbo, definitely a good idea. You honestly don't need to port the heads to max out that turbo on an 8.1. Straight 6 testing. Let me guess, a 300 Ford. I'd get away from iron heads. Good morning. It's a job getting any LS bits over here. Oh, over in England? Yeah. That's because it's import stuff. It's not JDM or EDM. Richard, how will heads be shipped to California? I have to have my ported heads shipped to Nevada because TSP would not ship them to California. They're not shipping them there. Supercharged. Bit rare, unique for UK. Pro Charger. 6-liter LQ. Those are good. That's a good choice. A 6-liter is a good one. Got 799 heads on 550 horsepower, supercharged 5.3. I was thinking about porting while they're off. And I thought, nah. I'm thinking, now that I'm here, I'm thinking about porting them again. See, I think maybe on a supercharged combination, I might be more apt to do that than I would on a turbo combination, because the supercharger is harder to max out because you have to do pulley swaps. And so I think making the motor more efficient NA is going to see more gains with the supercharger thing. Maybe it's just a personal thing for me. I just would be more apt to do that. Maybe it comes from doing all that 5-liter Ford stuff that needed to be modified. So I'm at 8% sale off 599. Good. I replaced the IAC and TPS sensor. I wanted a better intake either way. Might as well take advantage of the sales for the intake and throttle body, but maybe I'll fix my issue at the same time. Jags 20 off of 249, 60 off of 449, 120 off of 999. Is it $60 off or 60% off? That 60% would be nice. The fact that K-Tech will port heads for 450 is pretty awesome considering their background. I don't think many know what K-Tech is about. I know. I was talking to my buddy Jimmy about that. I'm like, it surprises me that K-Tech isn't ruling the LS market, given what they've done. I mean, given their history. I don't think other people can say, hey, somebody can say, hey, we won this such and such drag race, but they can't say, hey, we won Le Mans, or we won our class. I would try AFR trick flow. Did me dirty as a small block Ford owner. Can you use pistons with top ceramic coated? Are there any downsides of ceramic coating combustion chambers and valve faces? And the engine piston squirters, dry sump, trying to get the heat out of the engine. Are you trying to do it for longevity? Is that what you're thinking? I don't know what you mean, Daryl. I don't know what you mean by thoughts. I was wondering what the ensuing China tariffs do for the prices of the Jags catalog. Hopefully the price of our dollar goes up, but that's hopeful. I doubt that the dollar is going to go up as much as what the discussion is about the tariff percentage. So I think it's just going to increase the price on everything. Richard, can we run the engine with 15-1 compression with the 85? Which engine are you talking about, and what's the chamber design? But I think you could run 15-1 on the 85 if it's naturally aspirated. Adam, what's going on? Never works in our favor. Always against us. Yeah. The people that end up paying is the people. Sorry to keep annoying you about this compressor map. I confuse myself sometimes. I need 1 bar indicated on an old 3-liter inline 6. You don't. Why are you concerned about a compressor map? Do they have a GT3582? Do they have a compressor map for that turbo? You need to know 2 things to figure out if, well, you need to know 3 things. First thing you need to know is if they have a compressor map for that turbo. If they do, the next thing you need to know is what's my naturally aspirated power output. Then you need to know what the boost is. If you're running 1 bar, that's 14.7, and then you have to take your naturally aspirated power output, that's going to give you the point on the compressor map. Because the compressor map is going to be, you're going to need to know how you go this way along the bottom. That's airflow. And the airflow is how much power you're going to make at any given boost level is a function of the NA power output. So if you start out with a 200 horsepower inline 6-cylinder and you run 1 bar on it, you need to go to the airflow that's 400 horsepower and then go up to 14.7, and that puts you on your map spot. How's the 4200 going? It's still just sitting there on the ground. S475 T4 on an E85 turbo LQ4. I feel like I'm leaving power on the table. Leaving power for what? Are you trying to max the turbo out? You're trying to get all the turbo can do? Because on a T4, on a 6-liter, you might get to the hot side flow before you get to the cold side flow. But that's going to be near 1,000 horsepower if that's what you're trying to do. I have unloved 317 heads in my 6-liter for boost. I know they'll work, but what would you suggest if I'm looking to upgrade? It depends on what you're doing. If it's boosted, the first thing that I would talk about is not the cylinder heads. Your heads are fine. Just leave them and run them. You need to figure out what your desired power output is and then what your turbo is. So do you have a turbo that you can already max out? Then the heads are not holding you back. Your turbo is holding you back. So if you have 1,000 horsepower turbo and you're making 1,000 horsepower, the heads are not holding that back. The turbo is. You need more turbo. So before you consider going to a different set of heads, you should consider what you're trying to achieve. Like where do you need to go? Where are you and where do you need to go? And then will different heads help you? You're not going to make any more power than 1,000 horsepower with 1,000 horsepower turbo, no matter what heads you put on there. So I wouldn't worry about that as a consideration. Do you know if anyone's making 4.3-liter V6 cams? Yes. We had that discussion long ago, but that's in the works right now. Reported my heads. Let's see. Ported my heads by just removing the carbon buildup back to stock. So if you took the carbon off of the combustion chamber, then you just lowered the compression. Probably not measurable, but TSP would not ship to California. Okay. Yeah, I'm not privy to what TSP is doing. I don't really know those guys. $60, so 12%. Did I most of Trophy 4 traffic return? No, you did not. I have not run that yet. For a 6 PSI low buck truck cam, only 5.3 daily, would you just get an eBay GT45 and call it a day? Yes. That's what I would put on there. I would like to see, in fact, I may contact Matt about that. I'll send him the turbo if he'll do it. If he's got something on a vehicle that he can run on the chassis dyno or out on the street, I'd like to see what the spool rate is on a 78, 75 VS Racing turbo. Like even just not even a billet wheel or anything, just their standard wheel. I'd like to see what that does in the real world, whether that's the chassis dyno or the engine or the out on the street. I'd like to see what the difference in boost response is in a car. So maybe I'll contact Matt and see if he'll do that. Turbo versus NA on an autocross car. I don't know what the autocross course is. If you can build enough power NA to where you're having trouble with traction, then you should just do that. But if you can put more power down, then more power is always beneficial. Endurance racing can't increase cooling system due to space limitations. Okay. So you're trying to get more exhaust out of the motor, trying to get more of the temperature to go out the exhaust and not be transmitted to the motor pieces, which transmit it into the cooling system. Mazda 1.3, and it's like a Hemi. If it's a Hemi combustion chamber, isn't that going to be really hard to do? Because a Hemi design chamber typically is really big. That's why considering ceramic coating chambers. I don't know, Amir. I don't know if 15-1 is going to work, because when you start talking about that, you're not talking about I'm not doing 12-1. I'm not doing 12-1 versus 13-1 versus 14-1. You're talking about a lot of other things too. You're talking about what's happening with flame travel with the kind of dome that I have to run on that. Is the piston design is going to be critical, because you might have areas of detonation propagation because of the piston design that's all but mandatory because of this ridiculous static compression that you're trying to run with a very small displacement motor. It gets difficult to do it on a small displacement motor because you have to fill in everything. And when you're doing that, it gets really hard to make it efficient. Where's water injection? It's the same place that it's always been. Just going to upgrade to a T6 and S480 or S488. It takes a lot to make a 6,000-pound truck go fast. Yeah, I mean, if you're an S480 is going to make more power than an S475, and an 88 is going to make even more potential. It's just going to be softer down low. Which electronic boost controller would you recommend for a daily? I don't know. I actually have not done that. So I've not run one in a vehicle. And the only electronic controller we've used on the dyno is that TC1. And then also the Holley, just using a 3-port kind of thing to control it. So I don't know if there's a standalone controller that I would use, because I just haven't tested enough of them. And I don't think that I'm not convinced that the engine dyno on an electronic controller, again, gives us like out there in the street kind of data. I think it would be like the response rate test that we would do on an engine dyno is not nearly as good as it is, out of the track or even on a chassis dyno or out on the street. LQ4 480 running donor for turbo swap. Looking for 800 wheel horsepower, street strip, highway reliability. What's the logical budget-friendly route to take? An LQ4 is easy to make 800 wheel horsepower with. I don't know how involved you want to get in the build. You could do it with ring gap and head studs and a cam and a turbo, right size injectors and pump and that sort of stuff, and an intercooler. You could also put forge internals in it. Summit has good stuff. Now might be a good time to buy it if they have it in stock. If they've got the Pro LS stuff, that's good stuff. Or like I said, we've run that power level with lots and lots of runs, and lots of guys are doing that with ring gap on the stock stuff. Considering stepping down from my S475 on my truck with 3400 stall, I want better response. So what are you going to put in its place? I think if it's a T6 S475, I think a 7875 T4 is probably going to be more responsive than that. On the fence about installing one of your truck cams on a 5.7. Stock LS1 currently has an LS1 cam. Power goal is 600 wheel horsepower. Want quick spool, but it looks like low end torque is good on the truck cam. That low buck truck camshaft will be way better down low than a factory LS1 camshaft. And 600 wheel horsepower with a turbo with any kind of camshaft is really easy. Loud and Clear is recommending the eBoost 2. I've not run that, but that's what he's saying. Turbo's a 7875. Been using a True Boost for years, but it only uses duty cycle and no feedback loop to maintain a specific boost setting. Okay. Does a turbo spool at different rates depending on vehicle weight? Yeah, load probably could have some change on that. $15 for Ford's LQ4 turbo built 480 with a stall. You got a LQ4 for $15. Is that what you're saying? Trailblazer SS intake manifold, long tube, 706, 218 cam, 5.3, tuned on 93. How much horsepower will it make on the engine dyno? So it sounds like a stock 5.3 with the 218 cam in it. Really right with the Trailblazer intake manifold on it. I don't know. 425 probably. 425-ish. What intake would you use on a 6.4 Hemi with the BTR 224 cam, Edelbrock Victor 2, or a Holley Hiram? I need to go back and look at and see if when we tested some Hemi intake manifolds, if they tested that Victor 2. I don't know if they did. And also what are you trying to do with it? Like, what are you drag racing it? What are you doing with it? Land C dyno makes dynamometers on car as you race around the track, downloads to a computer laptop. Favorite or most commonly used bearing brand from your LS rebuilds? I think probably Clevite, but also there's what are the other ones that we use? I want to say CNR or LNR, but that's not it. There's a couple of others that we use too. 911 LS swap mounts bolt to the head accessory bolts. Would that make the head lift more possible with boost? I don't think so. Are you worried that because it's holding the motor by the head, that it already has the rest of the motor weight pulling on the head away from that? I don't know. Yes. Friend of mine, large turbo on a neon track car. It was soft down low from a stop, but worked awesome on autocross and track days. Made any more bottom end, it was killing it off corners. Okay. He tried nitrous off corner hit and it was always slower. Woman tech support said today claimed the K1 4340 ARP 2000 rods were only good for 500 horsepower and a 5.3. Yeah, she's not she's not that savvy. Hastings and King. I don't think that's who it was. I'd have to look back at some photos. We probably have used King, though. I don't remember if we've used Hastings. If my ECU is not controlling the EBC, I would get that. I think the back pressure using a log style turbo manifold is that big of a deal on just a cam only 6 psi? No, it's not gonna make any difference at all. Trying to pick a budget turbo kit and there's a big price jump from cast stuff. No, you don't have to worry about that. We use the truck manifold. It's not a log style manifold, but we've used log stuff. I did a turbo on the Dodge Ram with the log style manifolds. It works fine for low boost stuff. B's for street strip. I'm not sure if the Victor 2 will be enough and maybe the Hiram is overkill. Is the Victor 2 a single plane manifold? I don't know what the Hemi stuff is. Victor 2 Hemi intake. Oh, okay. That's the longer runner deal. Okay. Richard, at what point should you go aftermarket PCM for an LS? I don't know where that is. Given all of the tunes that Matt has available and all the power that they've made on stuff with the factory ECU, I don't know where that would be. Your opinion on oilless turbos versus oil turbos? I've never run an oilless turbo, so I don't know. Is anybody running an oilless turbo in motorsports? Like, is anybody doing that on serious drag race cars? And for a drag race car, I think that that would be the application for something like that, where you're not generating sustained heat. But for like Le Mans or something like that, I don't know how you could get away with that. And for me, an oilless turbo would only be for ease of installation. I don't think that there's any benefit to that, not in terms of power or anything. I think it'd only be just so that you could mount the turbo where you mount the turbo. And so it's a convenience thing. Check out Boost OS for Gen 3 or 4 stock PCMs. Likely fine for 99% of the builds. Oh, that's a good point that John made by Perford. If the ECU won't do other things, I kind of was focusing on, can you do the tuning to make the power? But if you're talking about, traction control and boosting gear and all and different things, then where the aftermarket ECU is able to do that and the factory one can't, then that might be a consideration. Easiest way to lift a 351 Windsor without removing my upper and lower intake and ruining them. I have a cherry picker and can get a chain. We bolt it to the heads, but I've also seen guys lift it with the intake manifold. In fact, I saw the guys when I was racing with the guys from Bear Racing. He had the Cobra intake manifold bolted to the lower intake manifold, and we just wrapped a 6-rib serpentine belt around it, went around underneath the intake manifold and lifted the motor out like that. I'm like, ooh, this is, I don't like the bolts to be loaded like that in an aluminum intake manifold, but I have to say it worked just fine. And when you see guys lift motors out with carbureted intake manifolds with lift plates on them, that's 4 bolts in an aluminum manifold. So I think it's probably fine. We lifted a 460 by the cast exhaust manifolds when I was in tech school. We've done that a lot. I mean, that's not going to hurt anything, particularly if you have all of the bolts in a cast iron exhaust manifold going into a cast iron set of heads. You can't break that. Try not to ruin my junk or hit the car, just nor injure somebody. Intake manifold's the expensive part. Yeah, I get that. Those are not cheap. That's a problem when you're worried about scratching stuff, which I will be worried about if I ever have to do a motor swap in the Omni, because the engine compartment was so nice. It's okay. When we put the motor in, there's nothing really on it, and it was easy to put in when we first did it. And the guys from the car farm, Brian and Ben, know what they're doing. And then you start adding all the other things on it. You're like, man, there's so much, because it was all stock. So there's so much stuff here. Pull valve covers and attach to the head bolt. You can do that. Whenever we install motors on the dyno, we run bolts into the accessory holes in the heads. Not all combinations have that. All the small block Chevy, big block Chevy, small block Ford, Dodges, all those do. But some of the motors are weird, and like the modular Fords were weird. And some of them don't have position. So you could lift it with the exhaust bolt holes. It's not going to hurt anything. Watch the video. A guy welded the water passages closed on his heads to prevent gasket failure. I don't know why you would limit or stop water flow if you're worried. This seems like a good way to blow the head gasket. Did he just not want to get water when the head gasket eventually blew? Did he not want to get water on stuff? Haven't looked, but have you done videos on other Hemi intake tests? I need to look and see. I can't remember now. I sent Brian a bunch of intake manifolds when they were doing intake testing on the newer Hemi stuff. So he ran with, because they were doing Hemi cam tests, and he did a bunch of intake manifolds. And I don't know if I put that. I don't know if we did those tests or not. Or rather, I don't know if I did a video on that. But they did test a bunch of intakes on the Hemi, and so I have that data. Akin to filling the block with cement or using CSS, but welding the bolt or welding the coolant passages doesn't do that though, because filling the block adds structure to the cylinder, adds structure to the sleeve. But like if you welded up all of the deck surface, you're stopping water flow. Weld the water passages on his heads, yeah. Now you have guys that run billet blocks and billet heads that don't have water passages in them, but they don't run them for a very long period of time. And a lot of times those guys are running on methanol anyways, which is pretty cool. How's our poll doing? Would the TFS 205 heads add 35 horsepower over the stock 706 heads on a stock and a 4.8 liter? 54% saying no and 46% saying yes. We're a little bit split there. Will your low buck truck work with the triggers on an LS1 3? Yeah, it's a 3-bolt cam like most cams are. Though some of the factory ones were single bolt, but almost all the aftermarket cams, unless they make them dedicated for a single bolt replacement, they're 3 bolts, and the crank trigger on an LS1 is on the back of the camshaft anyway, just like all the Gen 3 stuff. So that's not an issue. Harbor Freight jigs, load leveling engines, hoist apparatus is good for pulling engines by head bolts. It's about 16 inches long and clear the intake manifolds. We have on ours, we have the load leveler deal, and then we have chains that come down from it. And so the chains grab onto the bolt holes for the accessories for the cylinder heads normally, or exhaust manifolds or other things sometimes. Sometimes on some big motors with big blowers on them, or blowers and tunnel rams and things that are very high, sometimes they got to do straps on them and then run these big long straps up to the bolt holders, or sometimes they'll hook another, it's just a long bar spreader with hooks on it, and they hook the straps onto that so they can lift up these giant blower things. Is honing the cylinder important if opening up a ring gap with the same rings in the engine? No. I've done it both ways, but we normally don't do that. We just put ring gap in it. Has anyone seen any killer Cyber Monday deals on car-related stuff? So far, I'm underwhelmed. Wish I had one of those levelers around the garage. It does help a lot because we have to get the motor has to be level and straight to get it to go into the input shaft and to get it to go onto the dyno. My 351 heads water journals have an L-shaped opening, but my air gap intake does not. That's pretty normal. And a lot of the head gaskets or the intake gaskets have that too. And a lot of times what I would do is I would just cut those out. I just use wire cutters and cut those out. Daytona 3-ton jacks today for $25. That's nice. That's a good deal. I was looking for deals on scooters. I want to get an electric scooter. I want one I can ride wheelies on. Wow. Put wheelie bars on it. I want one that has so much power that it burns off, though. I want to put like a Tesla plaid motor on it. It'd be good, huh? Wow. Just so you can do smoky burnouts in it. Electric scooter would be a good one. They are great around the pits. Yeah, they are cool. I have the GoPed, but it's not great for long distance stuff. It's fun though. I drive it over to 7-Eleven a lot. We ride on the back of my pegs, hang down for a large thin crust with double sauce. You have the pegs on the back. Is it a BMX bike? Because those are the cool ones. What braking oil do you use? Whatever's on sale for braking stuff, unless we're doing something specific if it's for a flat tappet cam, then we'll use really high zinc stuff. If it's braking oil for an LS, we just use, I normally don't even use braking oil for an LS. We just use oil. I gave myself a concussion and laid out in the street on a scooter. That's not good. The good old middle school days when life was better. So Tim, did you ever have your buddies? Because I wasn't that much into BMX stuff, but we always had fun on these bikes. But we had guys that used to race BMX, and they had the tough wheels when they first came out and all that stuff. But I remember them. We had on our way to school, we had this trail that we walked on to go through one field, and on that field there was a hospital there, and the hospital was elevated from the field, and so they had this little embankment that went up, and so they made a jump, and so they used to ride, go as fast as you can down the trail and then hit this jump, and then you jump into a parking lot. And so it's perfect, because you're a bike guy, it's like a perfect little jump. And then the kids would like lay themselves on the ground, and then the guy on the bike would see how many kids he could jump over it. And then the end guy was always the, you get like 2 or 3 guys, you could easily sail over that. But when you get to the 8th or 9th guy where he's just making it, the last guy's like, yeah, that was fun. I got a thick steel bar from the hardware store and welded chain to the ends to make a engine spread hoist. Yep, you can do that. You could bolt it too. You don't have to weld it if you're not a welder guy. If you got a drill, you could use the drill. What are the good electric scooter brands? Seems like some niche markets are occupied by China brands and super expensive brands, but nobody has heard of. I wonder about buying a low dollar deal and having it not last very long. But what I want, the thing that I want out of electric scooters, so electric scooter people, if you're listening, what we want is being able to recharge them is nice. But what I want is a removable battery that we can put another one in or carry another one with us. So, or have it on a little mount on the back that we could interchange them. So we could go out as far as we want to go with the one battery and then have the other battery to get us back. So that way we can increase the range and we don't have to take the vehicle to somewhere to where we have to charge it. But like the removable batteries, like the 40-volt deals that are on, most leaf blowers and weed whackers and all that stuff, something like that. Even if it's just another version of the battery that's already there, make it removable, easily removable, so it slides in and out, so that we can hook another one to it. That's my wish list. My family could never afford the good lightweight BMX bikes. Yeah, I always had the bikes that I got when I was young. We always got bikes that were auctioned off by the police that were turned in, that were like stolen bikes. And a lot of times they came in pieces. So my dad and my uncle would get the bikes and put them together. And so we'd get this hodgepodge of stuff. It'd have been cool back then to have a Schwinn with especially a multi-speed Schwinn, but something that had a banana seat, a sissy bar, and a cheater slick, and if you were cool, you had the like Springer front end, but you had straight ups on it, and then later on the BMX stuff came in. How should I break in my engine on the street? We just drive it. You just don't drive it, like don't go out and drive it at 2,000 RPM on the freeway for 500 miles. Like don't go take a trip back and forth to Southern California. Just drive it around, but just drive it easy. Don't go to wide open throttle. Like when I was breaking my Camaro motor in, I didn't go to wide open throttle for 500 miles. It's hard to do. A lot of people can't do that. 5.3 the ring gap, 799 heads, 226 cam, 7875. Starting at 15 to 18 pounds of boost. How much power should I expect to the wheels through a power glide? I have no idea what a power glide in a 9-inch will be. No idea at all. 18 pounds on that thing could be 226 cam stock heads. That could be, let's say it's 900 horsepower at the flywheel. So I don't know what that is to the wheels through a power glide. Why is a GoPed bad long distance? It wears out the tire a lot because of the way that the GoPed is driven. So tire longevity is not good for really long distance stuff. Also, it's just wearing on you just to be going long distances. And on a 2-stroke like that, it's probably not good to run it loaded for that long. So dropping my lunch, I wiped out and knocked myself out. I woke up with people standing over me discussing if I was dead or not. That's not a good conversation you want to hear when you wake up, but at least you woke up to hear the conversation. That's the important part. Scooter market's kind of ridiculous. Larry, I first changed the oil and I went to drive up a large hill and engine break down the hill. Repeat until I'm happy and change oil frequently during break-in. I don't change the oil frequently. I change it after 500 miles or so. And then once you do that, then it's ready to go. Check out Wolf Warrior King scooter. Okay. I'll have to check that out. Changeable battery would be nice. Yep. The China batteries catch on fire often. I've bought aftermarket batteries. We bought them for, I bought the kids, I bought them for me, aqua scooters. So the underwater scooters that will, like when I'm snorkeling and stuff and I could cruise around. I loved them. I mean, James Bond had those, so they're totally cool. We took them on vacation with us, but I bought new batteries for it because I bought upgraded batteries for them that had more life and more voltage. So, because we want to go fast underwater. And they work great. They work fantastic. I loved them. I think that those things are fantastic, particularly for somebody that likes to dive. Because a lot of guys go snorkeling and you get the tourists that just sit up on the top and lay on their pool noodle and look underwater. I'm like, no, all of the cool stuff is down there at the bottom you got to go down where the cool stuff is. And so with these aqua scooters, you can go down under. And since you're not having to fight, either if you have a weight belt so that you can get down easily, then getting back up is a little more problematic. But you can have more downtime because you're not struggling to get down or up by kicking a lot. And it's just dragging you around. And then you could go faster and see lots of cool stuff. I mean, I went really deep. I went way beyond the rated depth of the aqua scooters when we were doing it. I found because when we went to Mexico one time, and we went out on a cruise boat that took you out to an island where you had to swim under the cave to get to the beach that's inside. Because it's open inside on the top. And so the sun is shining and everything. The beach is in there, but you got to go underneath to get it. So it's really, really cool. But there's lots of caves and everything to cruise around on. But they said, you can't go underwater. I said, oh no, I'm going underwater. They said, no, you can't do that. Because then we don't know if people are drowning or whatever. I said, look, you don't have to worry about me. I said, I'm as good as anybody you got here. I said, but I'm going underwater. And what I did was found one of the guides. And I said, do you want to try this? He goes, oh, that would be awesome. Because he hadn't never seen one. And so I borrowed the one for my son. And he and I went away from out of sight of the boat and the mean people. And we just, he said, there's there's a long swim through cave here. I said, let's go. I said, I'll just follow you. I said, let's just go do it. So we dove down. It's probably this one, the entrance to this was probably 25 feet or something. So we went down, and when we went down, this was long enough that you didn't see daylight. So I'm like, I hope this guy knows where he's going. And so we went down and cruised through and then kept going. And then pretty soon you could see the daylight. Then we went up to and came out the thing. I'm like, oh, dude, that was so cool. Because there's all kinds of tarpon and moray eels and all kinds of stuff. It was awesome. So that's my spiel on aqua scooters. So I highly recommend those. Had a similar trail beside my house. Watched a guy jump a Honda Spree. It's not a good jumping vehicle, and bounce off both fences lining the trail, disintegrating the scooter. He was mostly okay. A stick shift swing. That's right. They had 3-speed versions of those, and then I think they had 5 speeds because they just had the thing, on the little gear on the back. The Schwinn, you look at a Schwinn now; those are probably money now. I bet. The Ego MB 1000 mini bike has removable batteries, lots of torque. Okay, for a mini bike, yeah. I've seen the bikes too that guys drive around on and pretending that they're going for a bike ride. Dude, you're not. That's not good. It's good to be out in the fresh air. That's awesome. Being out in the sun, all of that's good. But you're not going out for a bike ride. You're just sitting there. Got an Amazon mountain bike, super cheap considering the large battery, full suspension, hydraulic brakes, super sketchy by the company name. Pucky Puppy. I like that. 200 miles in the wood. I keep buying them for 800 versus 3,000 for the brand name. That's good. What's your reason for not liking single pattern cams? It's not that I don't like them. They do a specific thing. They just don't make as much power as a dual pattern cam if you keep the intake duration the same. Friction drive is terrible. I hear it's bad to go long distance and wide open throttle on a 2-stroke, but my chain engine was fine without even used motor oil. I have driven my GoPed miles, 5 or 6 miles. I did it one time. I was visiting my parents, and somebody else had my car. My wife or not my wife, my girlfriend at the time, had the car, and so I was at home. And I wanted to go play golf. And the golf course was about 6 miles away through country roads. And so I put my golf clubs on and got on my GoPed, and I drove all the way to the golf course and then drove back that way too. And it was awesome. But it's a 2-stroke run at wide open throttle like that for long periods of time can be hard on it though. You gotta breathe it every once in a while. Richard from East Texas, 51 to compression, 15 to 1, 823 heads, E85 with a Dominator, 408. Is it feasible? Why are you set on a number for the compression? Because after you go up in compression, you start having diminishing returns of power gains that you get from that. So I'm just curious why, because like going from 14 to 1 to 15 to 1 compression might only be worth 1 or 2 horsepower. So I'm curious of why you would do that. We have a Rivian catch on fire here, the old Edelbrock building that's used by Rivian now. Okay. I guess use a magnet oil drain plug during break-in if I don't change the oil for 500 miles. If you choose an engine more than 4 or 5 horsepower, 4-stroke, you could use a 2.5 V-belt pulley to a double 20-inch BMW wheel, and it works well, 30 miles an hour. What is that on? What are you talking about? Is this a bicycle or something? An electric scooter and e-bike for 2 years, no battery problems. Good. Yeah, as long as you discharge them and charge them up, they work good. It's when you let them sit for a long time or cycle them at 3/4 charge or half charge all the time, that's not good either. I'm always at the bottom, but it's only for work. Oh, are you an underwater welder? Fish get curious when they see you making sparks. Dude, that's gangster if you're an underwater welder. That's good stuff. So I think your best bet is to gather a good e-bike motor, wheel, a good motor controller, and wire in your battery receptacles for whatever battery you're using. Of course, choosing the components that work at the battery voltage. All the amp hours have to work. The oil guy talks about changing oil filters a few times in the first 500 miles. Are you doing that because you're worried that parts of the engine have come off? Got a 5-speed stick shift on my fastback Stingray. An elderly gentleman gave it to me for changing a starter. Nice. Had a coworker who used to race GoPeds and he used to say he was faster after chatting with me. You gave him the what's up? 2 strokes for Caesar score. Yeah, if they run flat out. We were considering running. In fact, I got the shifter cart for this reason. We wanted to run a 125 shifter cart in the Silver State, which, by the way, is a terrible idea. We ended up not doing it, but for exactly that reason, that just trying to run wide open throttle for 90 miles are like, everybody that we talked to, they're like, that's a terrible idea. But why? We really want to do it. That would have been miserable. And I would have been the guy driving it. So it definitely would have been miserable. What compression ratio would you build an LC9 to running 92 octane NA, or should I scratch that and run turbos? I would run a stock one. I just run the stock compression. Are you trying to? I don't know what you're trying to do with it. Is this a daily driver? Are you trying to make lots of power? What are you trying to do? And if you're trying to make power, there's no choice there. NA versus a turbo. A turbo, you just put a turbo on a stock motor, and you'll make more power than you're ever going to make NA. Double roller timing trains let out a lot of metal during break-in. I pull the filter off at 25 to 100 miles just to make sure it's break-in. We do check the we check the filters during break-in on the engine dyno. I have a friend who was an underwater welder. He said, "I'm just trying to keep my head below water." Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. So 55% saying no, that they don't think that it'll make that much power. I don't think it will either. Which is why I look back at that stuff and go, Richard, if you didn't, well, even if you did do that, I question that one. So I question myself. Under yogurt welding. And on that note, it is time to go. I'll be back tonight. I'm working on another video on cylinder heads. And so what's it worth? What's a cylinder head upgrade worth? I've got some stuff coming up on that. I'll see you guys all tonight.